Here's an example of how to connect your Google Classroom to your Synergy grades where you are still giving them assignments, but then when they look in student view or parent view, the assignments don't show up as part of their grade. So I have my Synergy and my Google Classroom connected, and that's why you see the rainbow G up here. And you can see here the blue uh, assignment or my test questions are actually not connected to Google Classroom. With these ones, when I set up these assignments, I set them up in Synergy and I turned the Google Classroom connection off, which when you set up a new assignment, um, you can unsync Google Classroom right up here. You can only do that when you're setting up a new assignment in Synergy. Otherwise, you have to just delete the assignment if you don't want it to show up in Synergy. So for example, in my Google Classroom, I do have some assignments that I will assign just because I want kids, like in here, this was a synchronous day that I wanted students to have a material in class. And so I had to set this up as an assignment, and then I had to go into Synergy and delete that assignment from Synergy. But most of the time, I'll set up an assignment in Synergy and then, or I mean, in Google Classroom, and then it'll just show up in Synergy, and I just have to do a little bit of editing. So when it shows up in Synergy from Google Classroom, it usually shows up blue, and it usually shows up with assignment here, where it says practice now. And then what I have to do in order to make it so it doesn't show up for a score is I go into the assignment here, I click edit, and then I select over here, not for grading. It automatically has it on normal, and I have to set it at not for grading. And then I pick the assignment type practice here because I found that it already just shows up a different color. And so it makes it easier for the students to see that it is not being graded because it's a different color than my test scores. But I think you can also just pick different colors and stuff like that if you want as well. But practice for anything that I'm not going to grade. So those ones say not for grading now. And then the test is the only thing that shows up in my grade book. The reason that I have it set up this way is so that students can monitor their own progress towards the test. So here they can see, like for example, this student here is scoring 2s and 3s when they're practicing, and then they, this is probably after revisions, scored 3s and 4s on their test. So that shows that they are practicing, they are doing their practice, and then their scores here. You can also see some examples like this student here who does not do any practice but then doesn't really need to do the practice because they've done very well on the test. And you can also see students who are not doing any of the practice, and that is showing up in their test scores that they could probably benefit from doing a little bit more practice. So it sets up a really good conversation that you can have with parents and students about how doing the practice can affect their grade over the course of the class. For me personally, I have my assignments in Synergy set up with a scoring rubric. So I created a rubric in Google Classroom. And then once you've created one rubric, if you want to use that same rubric for all your assignments, you can just copy it into the next assignment. It will let you just use a past rubric. So I use the same rubric for every assignment or practice. But it is a lot of work because then you do have to go in and actually score each of your assignments based on the rubric. Another option, which might be a good one for people who don't want to have to actually score each one of their assignments, is to set your assignments or your practice work up with just a civics grade, like since it's not for grading anyways, just setting it up with like a point system that shows 0 means that they didn't try, and or did not turn it in, or it is not complete, and a 1 means that they did turn it in, they did try, it is complete. So that would be another way to do it, where you could just check off and still have that conversation with parents where they can see that their student is putting in the practice and is completing the assignments, without having to actually score each one individually.